Welcome to the Spirit of Business. My name is Jamie Pritchard, your host of Mortgage Agents, mortgage agent with mortgageguys.com, and we help businesses learn to thrive. Today I have with me my guest, Nicole Jansen, who is a business breakthrough coach and human behavior specialist. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Jamie. It's good to be here.
Great. Glad to have you. Nicole, one of the things I always found with the challenges with entrepreneurs is there seems to be two types. And I know I'm generalizing here. There seems to be the ones that hit the ground running and never look back. And there's the others that seem to struggle and either make it through in spite of themselves, or they drop off after 3 to 5 years and they're gone, which is about 60 to 70%. And I'm always curious from a behavior standpoint, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to this model that I teach, which is results, behavior, mindset. People want results. And whatever business owners, they want a certain result outcome. And how do we get to those results are through our behaviors and our actions. But what drives our behavior and our action is our mindset. And there's a lot of talk nowadays about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And that's really the issue, is that a lot of times people have entrepreneurs, they have a good idea. Maybe they were working for someone else and they said, I can do it better. Right. I see my boss, he's an idiot. I know I'm smarter than him, or whatever the case is, or her. And so I can do it better. And then they get into business. What they don't realize is business requires a different set of skills, and it requires a different mindset. And so with a fixed mindset, they are limited, and there's a lot of resistance there to learning and to grow into what they need to grow into, what to learn, discover what they need to discover. So it's like, this is what I know, versus having a growth mindset, which is what do I need to learn? How do I need to change? How do I need to adapt to the changing marketplace, to what the customers need and want? Businesses that don't survive, why do they not survive? Well, there could be several reasons, of course. But if you think about it, a lot of times what happens is that they have a product or service. They don't survive because they don't have sales. If you don't have sales, you're out of business, right? So right. They don't have sales. Why? Because they haven't made the connection. So from a behavior standpoint, they are, they're trying to go at it a certain way, which isn't working. And rather than say, you know what, forget the way that I've always thought it should be, what will work in this without sacrificing their integrity and core values and so forth. So they're not making the connection to what the customer wants. That might be their language that they use. Their marketing message is not effective. Right. Or they say, I don't like to sell, and so you've seen that a lot. So, yeah. So the key really comes down to it. Underlying all that is mindset.
So if I don't naturally have a growth mindset, but how is there a way to teach that to individuals that don't? So is there some hope out there for those of us that maybe it's not innate in our DNA? And if so, what do you see the key characteristics being?
So yes, I think it can be taught. There's this saying, can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oh, you can, but they have to want to learn them, right? They have to want to learn and realize. And so in order to learn something new, that they need leverage. If they're learning it on their own, they need leverage with themselves. What's going to cause them to want to make the change? And because maybe it's going to get so bad that happens a lot, right? Entrepreneurs, they get to the point where they hit rock bottom, or somebody in relationships it happens, or in health or whatever. And they get to the point where they have to do something, and they go, okay, so now they're willing to let go of the way that they were doing it because clearly it's not working. So bottom line is they need to they need to want to do it. If they're working with a coach, that coach needs to identify what is the leverage point to help them to move. You see Tony Robbins do that a lot. He's identifying what's the leverage point.
What do you mean by leverage point?
So leverage is yes. So leverage is, if I'm working with a client and they're kind of stuck in their way of doing things,
right,
and they don't want to change. Why would they change, right? It's, they're used to it. It's familiar. They might think that it's working. But if their business is, if they come to me and they've hired me because their business is tanking and they have no sales. For example, I had a woman a number of years ago, back when I was still living in Toronto, and her business had dwindled down. She had no revenue. At that point, she's like, I got to do something. Tell me what to do. You see, and now all of a sudden there was that leverage, not from a manipulation standpoint, but from a standpoint of her saying, if I don't do this, like, I got to go get a job.
Okay.
It's the same thing like the doctor says to someone who, let's say they need to change their diet because otherwise they're going to die. Okay. There's the reality of that, but then there's what will cause this person to change. They might not change for their own reason, but they might change for the fact in saying, look, if you don't change, you're going to die, and you're not going to see your daughter, and you're not going to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle one day when she's a grown woman and gets married. Oh, so they may not do it for themselves, but they might do it because they're like, ooh, that I don't want to miss. With the case with...
I'm curious. So what you're saying is that the leverage point is typically, what you're saying is that it's something that is external to them, or something that has either been brought on by their poor habits, or something that they've come face to face with. So that now they're at a point where they have to do something, and it could be continuing on the same path. Is that the only way to be motivated to change?
Absolutely not. So that's the first one, and it's very common. Okay.
Good.
So you're talking about the external. So, and it's a great question, Jamie. So from an external standpoint, that a lot of times is what gets people to move, right?
Okay.
Oftentimes. So like, for example, with this woman, she's like, I don't want to get a job, right? Like, it's one thing to have my business fail, but then if that means the consequences, I have to go get a job and work for somebody else. Oh, heck no, I don't want to do that. So I got to figure out how this business is. And that happens a lot with entrepreneurs. They do it not because, yes, they want their business to be successful, but what's actually driving more so the motivator is they don't want to go back to work for someone else and be told what to do and fall under that scenario again. So now let's talk, that's external. What's happening on the internal though? This is the spirit of business. So you're talking from internal standpoint, is what drives us from the inside. So for me, as an example, my leverage point is, for me, and getting myself to move is, I feel like I have a calling, I have a purpose in my life.
Right.
And if I don't change, and if I don't do certain things, I'm not going to be fulfilling that purpose and that calling. And that's going to suck. Right? Because like when I'm 85 and I look back, or 100 years old, and when I look back on my life and I haven't done those things, I'm going to have regrets, and I don't want regrets.
Right.
So those internal, actually, and oftentimes those are the ones that, or for example, it's just and we see that a lot now. People want to be seen, they want to be known, they want to be heard, they want to self-express. And so it's like, look, if I don't do this, I won't be able to self-express. If I don't do this, if I don't change, I won't be able to make the impact that I want to make in the world.
Right.
And so they may be willing to change for that. They may not be willing to change for, hey, I can make a whole lot of money. Who cares? They may not be interested in that. So the leverage point is something that is important to you, that is important enough to do something, to change what you need to change in order to achieve it, and or in order to avoid it. Right.
And in the spirit of business, I do talk about the double entendre of that word. There's I find there's two types of entrepreneurs that are very successful. One that are internally driven, They're driven by something that is a higher calling, or it could be something that they've done in their life or based on somebody. And the second is those that simply have a desire to achieve. And the external stimulus is something that keeps them going and keeps them moving. I am curious about the internal actions. And
I would say it's all internal. When it comes right down to it, if you think about even the example I use, the extreme example of sometimes looking outside our industry helps us to have perspective on it and see things more clearly. So that health, the issue, right? Going to the doctor says, look, if you don't do anything,
right.
do something, you're going to die. Okay. Oh, well, I want to see my daughter walk down. I want to play with my grandkids in the backyard and not be,
right.
huffing and
right.
puffing, and I want to play with them. Those are the things that motivate. Well, that actually is an internal driver that is driving that because of the pleasure that they would get from the activity. Just like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was an amazing woman. She was also, in a way, you could say she was selfish. What was her selfish interest? It felt good to make a difference. It felt good to help those who were impoverished. It felt good
Yep.
to help those children. So it seemed like it was an external driver, but when you really look at it, is that deep inside, the thing that moves us, it always comes from within. So I don't mean to contradict myself, but I'm saying is that there is external where you notice what's going on outside and you can attach it to that, or it's looking at visibly the obvious, the purpose. But either way, it comes back to what motivates. We only do things for our own interest when it comes right now.
And I think sometimes when we started talking about change, and you're right, there is two types of change. One, those that is sort of imposed upon you, so you haven't been doing the right things. You're up against the wall, and you have to do something or bail. And that is an external motivator, but ultimately, in order to maintain that may get the person moving. In order to maintain that, they need to have a bigger why and a purpose. And that's so typically I think the individual that is looking at that external driver may not have the answer to what you talked about is the calling. Why am I doing this? What's this for? Oh, I better do something. So I'm going to hire somebody. And but ultimately, in order to be successful, we have to know what that why is. So
it's actually interesting that you come back to Tony Robbins. He's got a few things that I use a lot with my clients.
Right.
And one of the things is the human needs psychology. And so there are 4 primary human needs that we all get met one way or the other, healthy or unhealthy ways: certainty, variety, significance, love, and connection. Love being a deep, intimate love, connection being more the surface, social connection, family, friends, and so forth.
Right.
So those are the 4 human needs. There are also 2 spiritual needs. Not everybody gets these met. And that is growth and contribution. So when you look at why people ultimately do things, you look at what is the human need that is driving that.
Right.
And so when, let's say, if we're talking with somebody who has to change, right? There's people that have to change and there's people that choose to change. They feel like they have to, right?
Right.
And then there's those that say, I want to change because I'm just willingly, right? So there's the resistance, like reluctantly I'm doing this because I know I have to, right? And like you said, there has to be something greater that motivates them. There has to be something that drives them to sustain that, because otherwise it's like the person, I come back to the health, the great example, people who are heavily overweight and they know they have to lose weight. And so they're being motivated by pain, right? Yeah. So I'm going to avoid pain. So I want to reduce the pain of that. And then once they lose a bunch of weight, then they're like, oh, this is actually, I'm doing pretty good. There's less, the pain is not motivating them as much. because it's not as bad as it was before. So what do? They ease off, maybe eat that cake, maybe eat the ice cream until it gets bad again. And then they got to come, then they got to work on it. Versus pleasure, which pain is a strong motivator for us, right? But it can't stay there because there's a limitation to it. So what you need to do is you need to move it and start to reframe. Not only do I need to lose weight to save my life, but I need to lose weight so that what bright future can I be looking at is I want to enjoy my grandkids in the backyard and play with them. I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to live a vibrant, healthy life and, enjoy my life for many long years of health. So it moves from that. But underlying that is, what is the human need? I want to connect with my grandchildren. I want to connect with with others. So when you're looking at from a business standpoint, it absolutely relates. It's like, I want to, what do people desire when they build a business? You mentioned about achievement, and a lot of people will say, I'm not doing this for all those other reasons. I'm doing it because I want to achieve and I want to be successful. Well, I would say that a lot of times, actually in my experience, is a lot of times what they're actually, there's two types of people who are driven by success. One is driven by the pain. I want to prove that it's a very deep subconscious. I want to prove that I'm not a failure. And the other one is that I want to create something so big and beautiful for whatever the reason is. So does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and perfect. And what I was going to say is your analogy of somebody who's overweight is it's one thing to actually lose that weight for a couple of reasons. One, pain is not always a strong long-term motivator. And then two, you need to be able to reset your mind, because once that person gets to or loses a lot of weight, they're now a different person. And they have to react to things differently, just the same as the business owner who has chosen to not do the necessary things to make their sales. Now they're at a pain point. It's sink or swim. They're making a decision and they have to make those changes. But long term, they have to change the mindset that is happening here, and they typically can't do that alone. So yes, yeah. It makes perfect sense. And people buy for two reasons: pain or pleasure. And it's interesting to hear you talking about that from a change standpoint and a mindset standpoint. I'm curious, how do you keep yourself as your best self?
Yeah, for me, what motivates me is the higher calling and the purpose that I alluded to. It's the idea that I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and go, shoot, I said I was going to do these things. To me, it's actually, even from a spiritual standpoint, I remember years ago having this conversation with my mother, and she was frustrated with my dad at the time because he wasn't doing whatever, and it was like this inspired thought. And I actually held on to it, and I was like, wow, Nicole, that's also for you too, is I said to her, I said, when you, and maybe not everybody believes in that, but it was just, to me, it was a picture in my mind. I said, I picture one day I'm going to stand before God and he's going to say, what did you do with the gifts that I gave you? And what are you going to say? He didn't, she didn't, the economy did this happened.
Excuses.
And he's going to, and I just have this vision of him saying, yeah, I didn't ask you about him or all of that. I asked you, what did you do with the gifts that I gave you? And as I said it, I was like, wow, that's really profound.
Yeah.
And because that's actually, I was articulating what drives me. Because when I look at, I was given these gifts, I was given this life, right? This short period of time in history to make an impact. What am I going to do with it? And so when I get feeling lazy or unmotivated, or I don't want to change because I'm 48 and I don't want to change anymore, whatever the case, right? It's like, man, I've been doing this a long time. Or you get into that, I know it all, right? Because I've been there, done that. And
I don't
the
need
arrogance
to learn anymore. I'm done. It's like being out of university. I've read all the books. I've done 4 years of that. I don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's the 21, yeah, it's the 21-year-old that thinks they know everything, and their parents suddenly become smarter when they're 25. So, it's just like, wow, you know so much. It's like, but yeah, actually I always did, but you just weren't,
Never asked.
you didn't ask, and you weren't, your mindset was that fixed mindset where you weren't open to listening to it. So for me, that's what really drives me, is I remind myself, what is my purpose? How am I doing in relation to, and it's not from a pain standpoint, but it truly is from it may sound like, oh, I don't want to miss out on it. That's kind of part of it, but it's really more about how awesome it will be to look back and say, wow, I made a difference. My life counted, and to look at the people that I have been able to help and empower and encourage. That's what motivates me to get past myself.
That, and that's such a strong vision that so many people don't have today, for what they want to do. That is fantastic. Are there times when like you say, you've got that in there? Have you felt blocked, or are there times where you've woken up and said, I don't know about this anymore?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So it's not all uphill.
No, and sometimes, sometimes it's happened a lot. And you know what, the thing that happens, again, we come back to the type of mindset that you have, right? So when I look at mindset and the way that you transform your mindset is made up of I think your personality and your strengths, and of course these human needs that we just talked about, and also your upbringing and all that. But it's really the beliefs that you have about yourself, others, and the world around you. And so whenever I look at, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. It's really, I've got to go to the roots and evaluate, what am I believing to be true about myself? What am I believing to be true about others in this moment? What am I believing to be true about the world around me? What am I focusing on? And so if I'm focusing on this sucks, or I don't, or maybe I haven't been taking care of myself. So that relates to a belief that I think that I need to work harder to make money, or I need to work harder and harder and longer hours,
Right.
Or that it needs to be difficult or whatever. So I always go back to the root and go, why am I thinking this right now? What is the belief that's driving that thought, so that I can pull the unhealthy weeds out and start to reframe. One of the things that I think entrepreneurs, and this comes back to those beliefs, and I just touched on it, is they don't take care of themselves. And so they run dry. If you think about an emotional bank account, right? You used to, you're still in finance, but you used to work at a bank, right? It's like, you have a bank account.
Yep.
If you don't put deposits in, you're not going to have anything to withdraw.
Right.
Emotionally, we all have an emotional bank account. And that bank account gets whittled down to the point where it's on, and most people, like you mentioned earlier about most people don't have that, is because they're running on empty. And they're just tired. They're physically tired, emotionally tired, mentally tired, spiritually fatigued. It's all this fatigue. They lack the capacity, right? Because of those bank accounts are all depleted. And so that's where it's important to step back. So when I get to that, I realize, you know what, Nicole, you don't make good decisions when you're hungry or tired. So I need to rest. I need to maybe get hungry, maybe means that nourishment, mental, spiritual, emotional nourishment, physical nourishment. But I need to fill myself up, and I need to rest, and I need to refocus on, why am I doing what I'm doing in the first place? What's the motivation? So if I can pinpoint the motivation, then I have a reason. I remind, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, we're without vision, the people perish. And I believe that's so true. Yep. The reason why people are struggling is because they don't have a vision. They're looking at the past and what could have been, or what should have been, or what was, they're looking and they're afraid of the future. They have anxiety. They're looking at the future and they're not seeing it be positive for them. Or they're afraid of where they are and what's going on right now. So I don't know what's him out. What's that?
What's Chester telling us?
I don't know, but he just like flicked and I was like, what's going on? I don't know. But he always likes to be in good conversations on Zoom. So whenever he shows up, I know we're having a really good conversation,
Good.
A heart-centered conversation, because he likes to hang out there.
So future, fear, and anxiety, they're either past or future focused. They're not focused on the here and now.
They're not focused on the here and now, and they're not focused on the possibility. They're not seeing the opportunities around them. It's a scarcity, right? It's a scarcity mindset, if you will, versus let's use some different language, right? Scarcity versus abundance mindset. Scarcity mindset is a limited mindset. It's a lacking where it's about lack. The world is a tough place. It's competitive. If you have more, it means I have less. That's a scarcity mindset. There's no opportunities out there. We're in the middle of COVID, and we're going to be seeing and experiencing the ramifications for years to come. There's not enough business to go around. There's not enough customers to go around. People aren't doing this anymore. They aren't doing that anymore. Focusing on those things versus focusing on this and saying, wow, abundance mindset. Wow, this is interesting. Things are changing quite a bit.
Yeah.
What are people looking for? They may not be doing this, but what are they doing? I have clients of mine that their entire business was live events, completely eliminated. Yeah. And they pivoted and are now have restructured their business to make money online. Yeah. Right? They're having more fun. They have more time. Everything, it's even better than it ever was before. And so I've heard many people say that it's actually their businesses are stronger and healthier and more rewarding and fulfilling than they ever were before. But that's because they were willing to pivot. They were willing to have an open-ended growth mindset.
And they're willing to ask the right questions. So
yes,
although things are happening, so there's two things there. They're willing to ask the right question. What's the opportunity here? And two, they're not affected by the emotion surrounding the external event.
Or they know how to they know how to handle it, because I think we're all affected by it emotionally. I mean, it does.
Oh, sure.
You see the numbers, and you if you're at all empathic, you're feeling what's going on.
For the first 3 weeks, I think it was partly a hope of like, I don't know where this is going. Yeah. I normally don't listen to the news in the morning. I, sort of pick it up in the night because I don't want to affect, but I've got to tell you, I was checking every couple of hours. What are those numbers doing? And of course they were going up. And then after a while, it just, I thought, this is tiring. It's bad. And me looking at this or seeing these numbers going up isn't changing anything for me because I have no control of this situation.
Yeah.
So what do I have control of? And one of the things that a lot of mortgage brokers are doing, one thing that I've learned from my business is that I can't rely on the purchase market because that is too volatile. So I have I have really consciously focused on refinancing and that part of the marketplace, and that has started to pick up. I've done different things. I've called people, let them know what I can do, and now the calls are starting to come in. So I know that once I get to the other side of this, if the market, something like this happens again and the housing markets drop down, it's okay because I'll have a steady flow of income. So I'm not.
You talk about mortgages. So back in 2008, I was still in, and so what you're doing is, which is fantastic, and I think you're putting yourself in a position to have a stronger business than you ever did before.
I hope
right?
So.
by being versatile and adapting. So back in 2008, I was working with a mortgage broker. He actually had about 65 agents back in the Toronto area, and the markets crashed. And so I had a meeting with him the next day, and he said, well, we need to start cutting back. And, we need to do this, we need to do that. And I said, well, hang on a sec. Let's just, for a moment, let's look at this. I said, number one, has your bank account, so the markets crashed in the US, I understand, and we had an impact there, but I said to him, I said, first of all, has your bank account changed? He said, no. I said, okay. Number two, your agents they're all straight commission, so they don't actually cost you, anything, and they don't have like, it's not like he had huge office space or whatever.
Yep.
Like they were all sharing offices, right? The
Yeah.
rotating office. So I said, so you're not paying them a salary, so why would you need to cut them, right? And so I said, no. I said, that's what most people are going to do. He said, but the market's going to be shrinking. The pie, right? The piece, like all the pie, the options, the opportunity, the market, the industry is shrinking. I said, okay, I got it. So most mortgage brokers and agents, is what they're going to do is they're going to dive for cover, and they're going to wait for the storm to pass, and then they're going to poke their head out and go, is it safe? And then they're going to go on with their business, right? Or they're going to or they're going to be trying to do the same thing over again and not be effective. So I said, what you're going to do is you're going to expand. That's what we're going to do. And it was interesting because that year his business grew. We did an evening, celebration at the end of the year. His business grew 10% that year, which market, the industry dropped about 30 to 40%. I forget the exact number. That was huge. Now he's got 110 agents. He's doing very well.
Yep.
But that's the difference right there of the perspective of how do you look at it? Yeah, you're going to the reality of what is. We can't ignore what is. People around us are struggling, having empathy for that. But
right.
the best thing that I can do is I can help them in any way I can. But I can also, one of the best ways I can do is to make sure that I'm thriving and making sure my business continues to thrive, and then I'm serving my clients in the best possible way, right? So that I'm not going to find myself in the position where I need help. You know what I mean? I could be the one helping as opposed to being needing the help.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like you said, it's all about mindset. And typically, we react to those events. I have to do something. The market's shrinking, so I've got to shrink.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious as to what great resources, books you read, things you do to keep yourself sharp.
So I do get a lot of books because of my podcast. I get all of my guests, almost all of them are authors. So I get a lot of books that way, and I have a stack of books to read. But I'll be honest, and it's not a setup because this is the spirit of business, talking about spirituality, if you will. But the book that I go to is the Bible, is number one, always, daily. I'm always looking at Proverbs to look for wisdom, because there's such incredible wisdom. It's not a book of perfect people, thank God. Because if it was, I wouldn't qualify to do any of those things. I would fall short.
I don't think any of us would.
Right. So, but to look at what they did and what worked and what didn't work is very powerful. Some other books that I would recommend, Blair Singer wrote a book, one of my mentors wrote a book called Little Voice Mastery, which is excellent when we're talking about mindset.
Yeah.
That's an excellent book. Old book, the Think and Grow Rich is an excellent book, and going back to that. So I look at resources that I look at principles. Practices are great, but practices change. If you understand principles of life, if you understand principles of business, then you can adapt when the practices change. Or doing social media. Now it's social media. Back in the day, when you and I started out, it was networking events, let's say, or whatever the case is, phone calling, cold calling, done it, been there, done that, right?
Yep.
So the practice changed, but the principles of building relationships in business and sales really hasn't changed. And so when you look for books that teach principles, you know that not only is it going to be relevant today, but it's going to be relevant 10 years from now, 20 years from now as well.
So if you were to give advice to a entrepreneur that might be struggling, what are 3 core principles that you think are necessary for a successful business?
Yeah, I think they need to have an open mind. That's number
Okay.
1. I think the second thing is so that's the curiosity and being open to changing and pivoting.
Okay.
Change is not a bad thing. Looking at it as a good thing. Change for the better, if you will. Number 2 is they need to have perseverance. I don't know why I'm looking at my fingers. Number 2, they need to develop the quality of perseverance, to persevere and to know that this too shall pass. This is temporary. They can get through it. I love what somebody said once. They said, I've made it through 100% of my bad days. I'm still here. So my track record's pretty good. So if I just know, and I say that because a lot of times in our mind, the survival, the ego, right? It's like the self-preservation, worrying about, am I going to actually survive this, drives a lot of fear for people, is to know that I'm going to get through this because I've gotten through a lot of things in the past. And
I have
so
a friend whose motto is, I never have a bad day, I have a character building day.
Yes, that's Les Brown. Les Brown used to say that. If you
Yeah.
don't, he used to say, so he'd say, if you wake up in the morning and there ain't a white line around your body, it's a good day. That was one of the things he used to say. And the second thing was, I'm not having a bad day, I'm having a character building day. Yeah, very, very good. And the other thing is that I would encourage to develop, kind of goes with the open mind, but to have a learner's stance, to learn your industry, to learn new things, to learn sales skills, to learn people skills. One of the most important skills in business is the ability to sell. But most people think about it as, I need to be able to finagle and get somebody to buy. No, it's actually people skills. To be able to sell and enroll people in your vision, to enroll people in what you're all about, and to provide and to present it in such a way that it's an opportunity for them. A very important skill. So as an entrepreneur, it's going to be hard to survive and thrive in business without the skill of understanding how to sell and how to relate to people. And so that's really, really important. And having vision, like we talked about, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that fits in with a lot of what you just said. So last question, if you, what do you think the spirit of business means to you?
To me, the spirit of the business is the heart of the business. The spirit of business is the heart that drives it. You have the shell of business, you have the structure of business, and all of that is great. But what makes the business unique is the heart of the business, which is the purpose, the mission, vision, and it's the people. But it's not just the people as like the workers. It's the people because of the heart that they bring to the business.
Right.
And there's a lot of people right now that the disengagement rate is very, very high because why they see their people as workers, as opposed to inspiring them, coming back to the sales skills, inspiring them with the mission. And so they're not actually bringing their time to work, but they're not bringing their heart to work. So that's why I say that it's the heart of people that come to work.
And one thing I find too is, if I can play a bit of a devil's advocate, having worked for a couple of large corporations in my career, is the heart of most corporate businesses today, even in America or Canada, North America, is shareholder value. And
exactly.
What that drives is, where can I lower costs? What can I do better? And it's not focused in what I see as being the people that get that business.
That's the problem. And that's why I don't think those businesses they're going to have a tough time in this season of history, they're going to have a tough time sustaining it, because people are starting to reevaluate what's important to them, and they're looking at their priorities, or looking at their core values, and they're looking for companies where they can contribute. Consciousness is evolving, and people, the awakening in people is so prevalent right now that I actually interviewed somebody, Jeremy Scrivens, just came out this week. Jeremy talks about, he's a futurist. I didn't read all his accolades, because he's like the top 10 influencer, global influencer in this category, in that category, in this category, and all of this. But he said there's two streams of leadership, right? There's two streams. So there's the basically the heartless business, right? That's driving towards stakeholder value, which is really money, right? So focusing on that, versus the one that's focusing on the heart of business and the spirit of business.
Right.
And so that's where businesses are kind of falling into one of the other camp. And the future of business is the heart, is bringing that heart into business. This is interesting, because when I don't know when it was, like 10 years ago, people started talking about purpose in business and all this, and 15 years ago. And I'm thinking, is that a new thing? Like, I don't know. That's why you got into business. You got into business because you wanted to create value. You wanted to fulfill your purpose. That's how you did it. You started a business and you brought your value and your purpose to the world. Through a business. And so to me, it was kind of a new thing, but that's because I learned that from my parents, that they were always purpose driven. Right. So that's it's going to be an interesting time. It's an exciting time. And for the people that are watching this show, to be able to capture that and be able to integrate that and embrace that, literally embrace that heart of their business, is going to be very important going forward.
Well, thank you for joining me today. If people want to connect with you, where is the best place to find you?
So you can go to leadersoftransformation.com. I have a coaching website. I've got you can find it all there. leadersoftransformation.com. That's my podcast website. Okay. But you can access me through that.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing more of your work and in the future. Take care.
Thank you, Jamie.